Man, I've been waiting on this package for a hot minute. I'm gonna get this thing inside and we'll unbox it in a little bit, but we got a nice long video for you guys. What is going on, folks? My name is Spice, this is Spice Can't Fish, and in today's video we are finally doing my rod and reel arsenal, conventional rod and reel arsenal that is, for 2024. Now, if you guys want to see my swim bait arsenal, all of my swim bait rods and reels, as well as all the baits, I actually did a separate video including all that stuff, so leave that link down below. But in today's video, we're going to be going over all of my conventional stuff. Anything that I used to throw, like normal baits, crankbaits, jigs, jerk baits, stuff like that. I usually do one of these videos every single year at the beginning of the year, just to let you guys know what I'm using, what we're working with going into the following year. I usually pick up 1 or 2 rods every single year. And so every year, these videos get a little bit longer. This year is no exception. And as of right now, we've got 11 rods in the arsenal. We got 3 spinning rods and 8 bait casters. So we're going to go through each and every one of those. I'm going to talk about the rod and reel specs, as well as the type of baits that I throw on each rod. And at the very end of the video, we're actually going to be doing an unboxing of that nice big package that you guys saw at the very beginning. That's obviously a brand new rod to add to the arsenal, and we've also got a sick brand new reel to go along with it. So we're going to get into that at the end of the video. But for right now, we've got a ton of rods to go through, like I said, and we're just going to go ahead and get started with the spinning rods, work our way up. But yeah, like I said, we're going to start off with the spinning reels and kind of work our way up the line. We're going to start with this guy. This is my lightest spinning reel, or spinning combo. It's a Pflueger Monarch. I believe it's a 6'6" medium light. It's a really light, really finessey rod. I use it to throw all of my lightest stuff. Ned rigs, drop shots, like super light stuff, real small swim baits as well. And this rod is super old. I think I've had it for like 7 years now. Still holding up. The reel that originally came on it has long since given out on me, but I put a new reel on it. This is actually an Abu Garcia. I believe it's the Ultramax. This also is a super old reel. I've had this reel forever. I used to have a different rod that this reel came with. The rod broke, as well as the reel that came with this rod originally. So threw this reel on that rod, and now we have ourselves a little mismatched combo. But yeah, it gets the job done. I don't really throw spinning rods all that much. It's not really something that I really enjoy. I try to throw bait casters as much as I possibly can. And that's why you guys will notice I have a lot of fairly expensive bait casting setups, and all of my spinning setups are super budget. But yeah, I got 10-pound high-vis braid to like a 6-pound fluorocarbon leader, I think that is. Again, for super light finesse applications, this is the spinning rod I'm reaching for. Alrighty, next up we got this spinning rod. This is a 6'10" medium light. This is a Matsuo rod. I've never heard of the company before, but I picked it up like a couple of years ago just for like a light budget rod. Up until that point, I think I only had that one spinning rod as my only spinning rod in the arsenal, so I figured I'd pick up a second spinning combo. And again, I don't really use spinning rods all too much, so I just picked up an inexpensive combo from Walmart that looked pretty decent. The original reel that came on this rod, again, shout out on me, so I don't have it anymore, but we do have this, I believe it's an Akuma Stratus on here. Again, another really old reel. I used to use this a whole ton. I actually used to have a bait casting version of the Stratus as well, and I used to use that as well as this as like my 2 main setup. But that was way back in the beginning of my bass fishing career, back when I just had like 1 or 2 rods. Somehow though, this reel has survived. It seems like a pretty solid reel. I stopped using it for a little bit just because I don't really use spinning rods all that much, but I dug it out and threw some new line on it, and it seems like it's working super well, so we're just gonna roll with it. And on here I've got 15-pound braid to an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, just something a little bit heavier. Again, this is something that I'll use for a little bit heavier baits. Right now, as you guys can see, I've got a shaky head on here. I'll use this for a little bit larger, small swim baits. If I'm throwing a little bit heavier of a drop shot, I'll throw it on this. Wacky rigs is something that I'll throw a lot on this rod as well. So those are my 2 main spinning rods. I'll usually be using those 2 like 99% of the time. This is just a backup one that I have for if I'm fishing with someone else who doesn't have a rod, or if I just need a backup 3rd spinning rod for whatever reason, if I'm just throwing a ton of super finessey stuff. This rod I actually found in my shed from way back when I was a kid, I guess. I don't even remember getting this rod, but it's just like a super old Daiwa rod that I never really used back in the day. Just sitting in the corner of my shed collecting dust, so when I came back from Colorado, I was just kind of looking through the shed and happened upon this rod, added to the arsenal. It's got the matching Daiwa shock reel on here. I don't really know anything about it. Again, just got a 15-pound braid to an 8-pound, or I think this is actually 10-pound fluorocarbon leader on there. But yeah, this is just kind of a backup spinning rod. I always keep an extra spinning rod in the car just in case I really mess up one of these 2 and just need an extra spinning reel. Or again, if I'm fishing with someone and they don't have a rod for whatever reason, always get to keep an extra one in the car. Alrighty, onto some stuff that's a little bit cooler. We're going to start talking about all my bait casters, starting with this guy. This is my jerkbait and popper setup. It is a 6'10". It's a Duckett Silverado. I really like this rod. I picked it up last year or 2 years ago at the beginning of the year, and ever since then I've been throwing it around a whole ton. Again, it's a 6'10" medium, so it's a perfect little jerkbait and popper rod. And I've also noticed throwing a weightless Senko on this rod for whatever reason is super manageable if you're throwing it around lighter cover. It's not a bad rod for that. But on here I've got 12-pound fluorocarbon. As you guys can see, I've got a jerkbait on there. If I want to throw a topwater of some sort, I'll probably like throw some braid on this thing. But again, it is mostly just kind of like a jerkbait stick for me. So whether it be a hard jerkbait like this or a soft plastic jerkbait like a Fluke or something like that, that's generally what I'll be throwing on this rod. And I've got it paired up with my Shimano Ingetsu BB100. This is a Japanese reel, or a JDM version of the Shimano Casitas. They're kind of difficult to get your hands on. They were a little bit of an older reel. I think they've gone down in price substantially, so if you can find them, they're actually pretty reasonable in price. When I bought mine, they were like 280 bucks. I think you can find them for like 150 now, so probably should have waited a couple of years, but I didn't know any better and I'd never heard about this reel before. This was kind of my first jump into the JDM market, and ever since then I've absolutely loved my JDM products, so definitely wouldn't go back and not pick the reel up if I had the opportunity. It's a sweet little reel. I just wish I didn't pay like twice as much as it's worth right now to pick it up. But regardless, absolutely love this combo. Super light, super balanced. I don't throw a jerkbait a whole ton, especially a hard plastic jerkbait. I've been throwing a Fluke a lot more as of recently, but hard plastic jerkbait is just something that I've never really had a whole lot of confidence in. But as you guys can see, I've got one tied on right now. I've been trying to throw them around as much as humanly possible just to try and get bit on them a couple of times, really gain that confidence in the bait. Because I know they get bit. I know a lot of people catch a ton of fish on a jerkbait. I just, for whatever reason, can't seem to make it happen. Alrighty, moving on to a rod that I feel like I have a lot more confidence throwing. This is my square bill and small crankbait rod. It's a 7-foot medium fast. It is the 13 Fishing Omen. This is the older version of the Omen with the old cork grip on it. They did a redesign of them at some point or another, but this is the older version. And again, this is generally like my square bill and small medium diamond crankbait setup. Anything that goes down to like 10 foot or less than that, I'll throw on this rod. It's a good wake bait rod. It's a good little square bill rod. Again, medium diving crankbaits. That's generally all I'll throw on this rod. You could also throw a spinnerbait on it if you really wanted to, but I've got another rod over here that I'd prefer to throw a spinnerbait on, which we'll get into in just a second. But yeah, overall, definitely really like this rod. I don't throw it as much as I probably should. I just don't really throw a crankbait really all too much, especially around here. A lot of our ponds are super, super grassy. Same thing in Colorado. A lot of the ponds were like super grassy or super scummy and just wasn't a great spot to throw a square bill or a crankbait of any kind. But when I do get a chance to throw around a square bill, I absolutely love to. It's something that, again, I wish I could do a little bit more. We just don't have great square bill areas around here, unfortunately. But yeah, I got that paired up with the Lew's Laser MG. This is the newer version. After the redesign, I should say. It's an older reel at this point. I think it's been out for about 2 or 3 years. But again, I don't really throw a crankbait a whole bunch, so I figured I may as well not pick up a super, super expensive reel for it. I think this reel only costs you about $70 or $75, so pretty solid reel for the money. And again, just got this spooled up with 12-pound fluorocarbon. I'm just pretty standard average stuff for throwing a square bill or a small crankbait or something. Alrighty, this next combo is kind of hilarious actually, because it's like a $25 rod with a $200 reel on it. But the rod I actually bought from Walmart is an Ozark Trail OTX rod. The reason I bought this rod was because I actually caught my personal best on it. Not this specific rod, but the exact same model of the rod just down in Florida. If you guys didn't see, last May I went down to Florida and actually caught my personal best while I was visiting my grandparents. I caught it on this exact rod when I went down there. I didn't bring any gear with me. I just brought like a reel and a couple of baits. So I went to a Walmart, bought the cheapest rod that I could possibly find, and that was this rod. I ended up going out and catching my personal best on it. And then of course when I left, I couldn't bring it with me, so I had to leave it down there with some random kid that I found on the side of the bank. But I ended up going out and finding the exact same model of rod and figured I may as well pick it up just as like a tribute to my personal best being caught. And then I just figured I may as well throw the SLX DC on there just because it's a pretty solid little bait caster. And this has just kind of been like an all-purpose rod for me. Again, it's a 7-foot medium heavy, so you can kind of throw whatever you want on it. This is the rod that I generally tend to throw spinnerbaits on. I love throwing spinnerbaits on this rod. It's a little bit more parabolic, as you can imagine, with it being a little bit of a cheaper rod. It's not as stiff or as sensitive as a higher quality rod, so you're going to actually get a little bit more load in the rod when you set into a fish. And for a spinnerbait, I like that. I think it's a pretty good action for a spinnerbait rod, so that's generally what I throw on this. And again, we got that 7-speed Curado DC, which definitely helps throwing a spinnerbait. A big spinnerbait like that's going to have a lot of wind resistance as it flies through the air when you cast it, so having a reel with a DC chip in it to kind of help stop those backlashes a little bit is definitely going to be a help. It's not going to make the biggest difference, you're still probably going to backlash from time to time, but it should kind of cut back on the amount and severity of the backlashes that you're going to get, hopefully. And then I think I've got 12-pound fluorocarbon on this one as well, so a very similar setup to the one that I throw my crankbaits on, just a little bit heavier duty. Alrighty, this is another 7-foot medium heavy, very similar to the other one that I just showed you. However, it's a little bit of a stiffer rod. This one's actually a little bit of a heavier tip. So it's almost like a medium heavy, like right in between the two of them. This is the Favorite Phantom. It's the John B. Rig series of the Phantom. So it's got like the fancy red grips and the little John B. Fish logo in the butt section. I bought this rod a few years ago just because I thought it was super cool. I obviously don't need another 7-foot medium heavy, but I thought it was really cool. Again, I really like the way the rod looks. Back in the day, I was a huge John B. fan, so I figured I may as well pick up his rod because it's friggin' sweet. The rod itself isn't fantastic, nothing to write home about, but it's a decent rod. I've caught a bunch of nice fish on it. It seems like it handles fish pretty well. And again, it is a little bit of a heftier rod, so I tend to use this for Texas rigs, lighter finesse jigs. I throw a lipless crankbait on it a good bit as well. You can throw a crankbait on it, you can throw a spinnerbait on it, you could even throw a chatterbait on it if you really wanted to, but generally I'm throwing a lipless crankbait or some sort of like a lighter Texas rig or finesse jig on this rod. Then I got it paired up with a Shimano Scorpion DC7. This is the older JDM version of the Scorpion. It does have a DC chip in it, but it doesn't make the DC whine, which is pretty cool. They haven't made this reel in years. They're really difficult to get your hands on, but I was able to pick one up for a fantastic price. I think I got this reel for like 120 bucks. It's a friggin' sweet reel for what I paid for it or what you would pay for it normally. And yeah, it's 7-speed reel. Just got it paired up with a 15-pound fluorocarbon on that as well. Again, perfect for throwing Texas rigs, lighter finesse jigs, lipless crankbaits, especially if you're ripping it out of some grass and stuff. You want a little bit heavier line. So yeah, that's like my little bit heavier duty all-purpose rod. Alrighty, next is a rod that doesn't get a whole lot of use from me, but it's a rod that I have in the arsenal, so I may as well mention it. It's a 7'3" medium moderate rod. This is the Abu Garcia Ike's Delay Series rod. So the Delay Series is like a little bit of a softer, more parabolic rod designed for moving baits. I picked this rod up with the intention of using it for deeper diving crankbaits. It's a decent rod for it, I just don't really throw deeper diving crankbaits. Again, most of the spots that I fish kind of max out at 10 or 11 foot deep, so I'm not really throwing a deep diving crankbait all too much. But it's a good like secondary moving bait rod. Again, like I don't really use it all too much, but you can throw a little like underspin swim bait on it. You can throw a spinner bait on it. I really like throwing a buzz bait on this rod as well. And so that's probably what you guys will probably see me throw on this thing, is either like an underspin swim bait or a buzz bait of some sort. Probably mix in a little bit of like some smaller crankbaits or maybe like a wake bait or something on the rod just to see how it handles it as well. But overall, just like not a rod that I really use all too much. But yeah, again, this is the 7'3". It's the Delay Series, so it's a little bit more of a moderate action. And paired up with it, we also have an Abu Garcia reel. This is the Revo X. These reels are fantastic. I've had this specific reel for, God, I want to say 5 years at this point, and it's been holding up on me perfectly fine. Again, I don't really use it all too much anymore. It just kind of stays on this rod because I didn't really have another reel to throw on this rod, so it doesn't really get a whole ton of use from me. But for a $99 reel, it's a fantastic reel. It's been lasting me, again, like I said, 5 or 6 years. Again, it is pretty old, so it's starting to get a little bit grindy, a little bit worn down, but still definitely gets the job done. Still can you put fish on the boat. And again, I've got this paired up with 15-pound fluorocarbon on it. So again, a perfect line for either throwing a buzz bait or throwing like a small swim bait. Alrighty, moving on to probably my favorite rod and reel combo at the moment that I have. This is my 6th Sense MFer series. It's the 7'4" heavy moderate. This is the Zark Special, so it's again the 7'4" heavy moderate, specifically designed for throwing swim jigs. I will also love it for a chatterbait rod. It's got that nice full EVA grip, which I wish they put on all of them, but they at least put it on this one and a couple of the other MFer rods. And again, I absolutely love this rod. I think it's like $130 or $140 rod or something. Very inexpensive rod, and for the price, you really can't find a better rod. It's super light, super sensitive, built incredibly well. I've had this rod for I think 5 or 6 years as well, and I've banged the absolute crap out of it. I've bent the guides out. You can just bend them right back. I've never once broken a guide on it. But yeah, fantastic rod, takes a beating and just keeps on working. Again, I've stepped on it, I've bent the guides out. I've done everything you could possibly do to this. I put this in a car door once. Things just kind of keeps trucking. I've caught tons of fish on the thing. I absolutely love it. Again, this is probably my favorite rod and reel combo, and paired up with it is, again, probably one of my favorite reels that I currently own. That being the Curado DC. Honestly, I personally like the normal Curado as well as the Scorpion a little bit better than the Curado DC, but fantastic reel regardless. I really like this thing. But it's a 7-speed. It's got 15-pound fluorocarbon on it, and right now, as you guys can see, it's got a chatterbait on it. That's usually what I'm throwing on this rod, is either a chatterbait or a swim jig, but it's a super versatile rod. You can throw just about anything on it. I've thrown anything from a shaky head to a jig, like a real big jig, dragging it, doing some lighter flipping. I've thrown smaller, finessier swim baits on this thing. Again, chatterbaits, spinner baits, swim jigs. It's just kind of like a great all-purpose rod. I hear people like to use it for like dock flipping because it's a little bit shorter, but it still has a decent amount of backbone. It bends a little bit further down the blank, which I wasn't sure if I was going to like at first, but I've absolutely loved it. And yeah, I can't say enough good things about this rod and reel combo. It's fantastic. Again, the Curado isn't my favorite Shimano that I own, but it's a decent reel and it definitely fits the bill on this thing. And yeah, we're definitely going to be catching a bunch of fish on this thing coming up here real soon. Alrighty, next up is another rod that you guys probably haven't ever seen on the channel, but it's again one of those weird rods that I found in the corner of my garage when I was just kind of cleaning it out, looking around. This is again kind of like an extra jig rod. As you can tell, there's a big jig on it. I'll just use this for like some heavier punching, some flipping around some heavier brush. It's a 7'6". It's a heavy, fast, really heavy rod. Like weight wise, it's not a light rod. I think I bought this from Bass Pro Shops for like 25 bucks or something like that. Again, this was kind of one of those weird buys where I was like somewhere and I didn't have a rod, so I just bought like the cheapest thing that I could possibly buy. This one just happened to find its way back into my arsenal somehow, so now we just have like this weird Bass Pro Shops version rod. But yeah, like I said, 7'6", so it's an absolute broomstick. Again, I would probably only use this as like a backup jig rod if for whatever reason I would need to like have a second jig rod if I need 2 jigs or like a jig and a Texas rig and I'm doing a bunch of heavy flipping. I just want to like switch between the two for whatever reason. I just have this extra one. But most of the time, if I'm just running the jig, I'm just throwing it on one of my other rods and then just having the one. I don't even find myself bringing this one anywhere ever. So it kind of just more serves as like a backup again in case I'm fishing with someone and they don't have a rod, or if I break a rod or something, I need a backup for whatever reason. I have this one here. And again, I've got it paired up with another super old reel. This is a Fluker Supreme. I really like this reel. Again, I've had this reel for a super long time. I think I bought this one and that Eva Garcia Revo at about the same time. And this one I think is holding up even better than the Revo. It's got some newer KastKing handles on it because my buddy actually stepped on this thing and bent the original handles that came on this reel. But other than that, this reel is fantastic. People always talk really highly about these Fluker Supremes. They say they last forever. I can say that they definitely last a good long time. Again, I've had this one for 5 or 6 years and I've used it for just about everything. It's got a ton of drag to it. I think it's got like 18 or 19 pounds of drag, so definitely a great little flipping reel for heavy jigs and heavy cover and stuff like that. And then as you can imagine, it's got 20-pound fluorocarbon on here. Again, this is mostly for like heavier brush and stuff like that. I don't find myself flipping around like really heavy grass with this rod. I usually use the next rod that we're going to talk about, which is the last rod in my arsenal at the moment. But yeah, for whatever reason, I want to use like specifically fluorocarbon to go do some heavy flipping, and I guess I always have this rod as an option to use. Alrighty, and the last rod and reel in my arsenal is going to be my heaviest one. This is, again, a 7'6", but it's an extra heavy fast, so it's even heavier than that last rod that I showed you. This is a Denali Attack Series rod, again, 7'6", extra heavy. This thing is a flipping stick if I've ever seen one. This is what I use for heavy punching. It's what I use for frogging a lot of the time. It's a really heavy rod. Honestly, I could probably use a better rod for frogging, but this is what I got, at least for the moment. But it gets the job done. This rod, again, like I said, is an absolute meat hammer. It has almost no give to it. It's just a freaking broomstick. And yeah, it really is just kind of designed for punching, but again, I use it for frogging again, just because I don't have a perfect frog rod, or do I? But yeah, again, this is another one of those rods that I've had forever. This is like my first like really nice rod that I ever bought myself. As a birthday present to myself, I think I spent like $120 on it, but up until that point I had been using like $40 or $50 rods, so it was a massive step up for me. And again, I just wanted like a super heavy frogging rod because I wanted to learn how to frog, and I wasn't really sure what I was looking for, so I just went out and bought like the longest, heaviest, biggest rod that I could find. And that was this thing. So we got ourselves a 7.6 extra heavy. Again, it's really just for punching and flipping, like super, super heavy stuff, but I have been using it for frogs. But yeah, anyway, I got this thing paired up with the Shimano Curado. It's the 200 size. It's an 8-speed, so it's an 8.5 to 1, I want to say. Super, super fast gear ratio, again, for flipping, punching, and some frogging and stuff like that. And then, of course, I got 50-pound braid on here. I could have stepped it up to 65-pound, but I honestly prefer fishing a 50-pound braid. I feel like you can get a little bit of a nicer cast, a little bit of a longer cast, more consistent cast as well. If I'm using this rod specifically for punching, then 65-pound probably wouldn't be the worst idea, but again, since I use this rod for frogging as well as punching, I want to actually be able to make a decently long cast. And having 50-pound line on as opposed to 65 allows me to cast just a little bit further, so I especially like that 50-pound since I'm fishing from the bank a lot of the time with this thing. It's super beneficial to be able to just absolutely bomb a frog out super far from the bank, so that's why I have a little bit lighter line for this one. But yeah, that's my entire rod and reel arsenal for all of my conventional stuff. Now we're going to get into the really fun, exciting part. As you guys saw in the beginning of the video, we got a big old package. That was a rod, obviously, so picked myself up a brand new rod to start off the year, and I am so excited for this one. As you guys can tell, a lot of my reels are Shimano's. Most of my reels are pretty high quality, but a lot of the rods that I have range in price from like $50 to like $130. I think the most expensive rod that I have is that John B one, which is like a $150 rod back when I bought it, but most of my rods are within that $100 price point. But I decided it was finally time to step it up a little bit, get myself a little bit of a nicer rod, so we picked up ourselves something super, super sick. And of course, since we bought a new rod, we obviously have to get a new reel for it because you can't just have a new rod without a new reel. So got an absolutely badass little Shimano reel to go along with it. But yeah, without further ado, I guess I can introduce you guys to my brand new frogging and heavy flipping setup. This is my brand new Megabass Levante rod. So this is, like I said, the Megabass Levante. I believe they're about $200 for a rod. This is the 7'2". It's considered their perfect pitch model. So it's a 7'2". I believe it's a heavy, fast, absolutely fantastic feeling rod. It feels super, super light, super balanced in my hand. And I'm so excited to take this thing out and do some flipping with it tomorrow. Because that's the plan, is after I'm doing this, I'm going to actually tie a bunch of baits on some of these rods, and we're going to get out and do some fishing tomorrow. But yeah, I just got the rod in the mail, and I figured I can't take it out on the water without first showing you guys officially that we have it. But yeah, this is going to be my new jigging rod. Like I said, it's 7'2". It's the perfect pitch, so absolutely fantastic for flipping around some heavier brush and stuff like that. But I also got this for a perfect little frogging rod. As you guys can see, it's actually got 50-pound braid on that reel, which we'll get to in a minute. But this, again, is a 7'2", so it's about 4 inches shorter and a lot lighter and more balanced than my original frogging and flipping setup. Again, that rod is really just kind of designed to be a punching rod for super, super heavy stuff, whereas this is a little bit more manageable. You can actually throw a frog on it and throw it all day without wearing your arm out. And yeah, this should be an absolutely dialed setup for throwing a frog a little bit later in the year and for throwing a jig all year round. And yeah, like I said, 50-pound braid to, as of right now, a 20-pound fluorocarbon leader. I might obviously cut that fluorocarbon leader off at some point and just throw the straight braid, but for right now, I like to be able to have that little bit of extra invisibility of the line, so we're going to roll the 20-pound to the 50-pound. And on here, I've got, like I said, a brand new Shimano. This is the newest version of the Shimano Bantam. Now, this is an absolutely gorgeous reel. I am so excited to get my hands on this. When I was talking with a couple of my buddies, like talking about what reel I should get for my new flipping setup, I've been bouncing ideas off of a couple of guys. And the one reel that one of my friends actually suggested that I never thought of was the Bantam. For whatever reason, I never thought of it. I was looking at the Chronarch, the Metanium, a couple of the other Shimanos, and a couple of Daiwas as well. But up until my friend mentioned it, I completely forgot about the Bantam. It's a reel that I know a lot of people on the Elite series actually use for heavy punching and flipping and big jigs, stuff like that. So I'm definitely excited to get my hands on it, put it on the water, and see what it can do. Again, it's an 8-speed reel, very similar to that other frogging and flipping setup. So I wanted another really fast gear ratio reel for heavy frogging and flipping and stuff like that. And yeah, I am so freaking excited to get this thing in the water tomorrow. Like I said, we're going out tomorrow. I've already filmed a few fishing videos this year, but you guys are probably seeing this video before you see any of those. But keep on the lookout. There are a few fishing videos coming. But tomorrow I plan on taking the kayak out. We're going to be tying a jig or a Texas rig or something onto this thing. And we're going to see if we can catch ourselves a couple of fish on it. But yeah, like I said, I'm going to try and get out and do a whole bunch of fishing tomorrow. So I'm going to get a bunch of these things tied up and get a bunch of baits ready to go. And we're going to call today's video here. I really hope you guys enjoyed though. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see some more content from me. Check and wreck 'em, and I'll catch you in the next one. I'm out. Peace.